Hey, happy Friday, everybody. We are live on The Last Word, a Chrisman commentary show. And we are joined by Robbie Chrisman, the younger brother of the Chrisman brothers.
The younger brother. We've been called the Chris Men, which I kind of like.
I like that one a lot.
Yeah,
That might make it into my my dad joke repertoire.
Good.
Robbie, thanks for jumping in. Christy, great to see you. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
So
Happy Friday, all.
Yeah, we've got a lot to cover. Obviously, there was some news out of Jackson Hole that we can probably start with, but just for our KP and Courtney fans that tune in just for them, don't be disappointed. Stick around. We're going to add a lot of value. But KP is on a plane heading back to his family in Southern California after attending the NAMBA event in Orlando. And Courtney's got some crazy race that she's doing in, I think, Memphis, Tennessee, maybe. So the three of us are going to do our best to end the week with a bunch of info and a bunch of value.
Yeah, well, a little inside baseball here for viewers of the show. I met up with Brian in Michigan at his humble abode. We hung out on the back porch, which is really nice. Courtney's nearby. I hit up Courtney to hang out as well, and she's like, sorry, I got to go run 15 miles. So very serious about her preparation for this race that she's doing.
Yeah, good for her.
I mean, Robbie, if you've never run a marathon, you gotta do it, because my husband and I ran a marathon together, and I trained, and he's like, I'm in shape, and he did one run for 1.5 miles before running a half marathon. One of us fared better than the other in that race.
Okay. Do we cross the line hand in hand across the finish line together, or everybody for themselves?
No, it was every man for themselves.
Yeah, a friend of mine's
There's a little competitive nature here.
A friend of mine's about to get married, and he just ran the San Francisco Marathon. And I hung out with him and his wife in LA after the Western Secondary. And I said to the wife, hey, are you also working out? Is he inspiring you with all this running he's doing? And she goes, no, I'm doing less, because like as on average, we're both doing more. So there's, could go both ways.
I like that.
I do like that. That's a good philosophy.
Yeah.
I've never ran a marathon in the sense that we're discussing, but I know what it's like to be in a marathon. That's my life in this perpetual startup at FinLocker. So let's start with the headlines. We had a board meeting earlier today, and I had a screen over here, 2 screens to the right. One was Chairman Powell in real time, and the other was the market reaction in real time. And I think I just checked the equities seem to be liking the results. I haven't really looked at the bond market, but first reactions to what we heard from Jerome Powell today.
Christy, go ahead.
I'll say, Robbie, I'll let you go first.
Okay.
This is your area of expertise.
I know we don't have our normal capital markets expert KP here, but I'll do my best to fill the void. The tweets have finally gotten to Powell, if you will. The pressure has finally gotten to Powell is kind of my interpretation of it. And the last that I looked, we're seeing a nice little rally in the bond market, which is good to see. I guess we noted in the commentary this week, mortgage rates are sticky on the way down, but not the way up. So even if we see a rally amongst treasuries, we might not necessarily see that drop in mortgage rates as well, as we kind of wait for the dust to settle. But essentially, Powell cleared the way for a rate cut in September. And I think we saw over the course of this week, the odds of a rate cut had declined from 90% in September down to mid 70s, little under 80. They're back up to 90 after this speech. And so I think actually 72% to 90% are the specific numbers. The dovish surprise wasn't really that he acknowledged the rising downside risk to employment, but that he kind of signaled that the shifting balance does warrant a change to our policy stance. And those words coming out of his mouth, or at least in the prepared remarks, that verbiage, triggered to people out there, hey, the Fed's ready to cut, which there's obviously varying opinions amongst the public, general public, and the Fed. There was dissension at the last meeting. Now this throws even more of a cat amongst the hens, if you will, in terms of, are we going to see a unanimous or consensus decision in September? Is it going to be more toward a 50-50 split amongst the 12 voting members? What's it going to be? He also said, and what kind of stuck out to me was that the downside risks to employment are rising, and if they materialize, they can do so quickly in the form of sharply higher layoffs or rising unemployment. So what I took away from that was, sure, we've seen tariffs kind of start to work their way in, but I don't think we're going to see a huge pop in the number. We haven't seen a huge pop. Wholesale inflation, PPI printed higher than CPI, obviously, but I think the Fed's focus now is how quickly could employment potentially unravel here, and we need to keep that in mind. And so it looks like, all roads are clear for a September rate cut. I think markets are still pricing in between 75 and 100 basis points of easing by year end. And remember, this will be my last thing before I let Christy jump in, because I've been on a monologue here, but the Fed doesn't set mortgage rates. The Fed sets the overnight lending rate. And as we noted in the commentary today, since the Fed began its easing cycle in September of last year, mortgage rates are actually higher. So just because the Fed cuts rates now doesn't mean that mortgage rates are going to fall. They're cutting the Fed funds overnight rate. And in theory, all the Fed easing this year, the 100 basis points I mentioned, is already priced in to mortgage rates. So unless we see, some big surprise one way or another with unemployment or inflation or something, I don't see mortgage rates precipitously falling anytime soon. But it's nice, nice general headlines for the public to kind of latch on to. Fed's ready to cut rates. Rates are coming down. Trump gets what he wanted. Those sorts of things.
Well, I mean, as you know, Robbie, it's all about psychology, and the market headlines will drive buyer behavior. And all the originators care about is that rates go down and volume goes up. And even if rates don't go down, if volume goes up, then people are pretty happy in our space. I don't think that anything that happened today really changes the outcome of what we were expecting. I hope it just keeps pushing us in the right direction. We keep having the right conversations. And, we talked about this, I can't remember if it was last week or the week before, but talking about just as an originator, you've got to get out and do the activities. You've got to get out and make the calls and do the things. Because if you're not doing those things, it's not going to matter what happens with rates. You have to be available and talking to people in order to have conversions.
Yeah, I think a couple points. The other screen I had going that while I was triple tasking, which I just now shared with our board that was all on a call with me, was I saw Greg Share posted in real time a clip, with Powell's comments that Robbie, you just gave us the prepared remarks, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the cynics are already jumping in, watch now the September jobs numbers will go the other way, and what will they do as a result? So
we've seen here, it's interesting with the BLS independence coming into question, or how politicized are things going to get? Will the numbers change? Some of these secondary reports, whether it's ADP employment or whether it's the weekly jobless claims, which we actually saw exceed estimates this week for the first time in 8 weeks, those are starting to get more weight out there. And so it'll be interesting to pay attention to some of these secondary numbers that maybe investors or market participants think have less political influence as we move toward this new normal, if you will. One other thing, Christy, and it's so interesting you brought up kind of the general sentiment out there, because if you look at the universe of existing mortgage-backed securities, a 50 basis point reduction in rates isn't going to do much for the refinance universe. Maybe it'll pop in terms of purchases and that sort of thing, but just the general sentiment surrounding, okay, the Fed is now on board with easing. Okay, we should see stuff start to come down. It should be good for mortgage in general, even if we don't see a huge drop in mortgage rates.
Well, and remember that a number of originating companies are financial institutions. And so this will drop their cost of funds, meaning that even if rates don't drop on the mortgage side, that means they're making more money. And for anybody who has an underwater book with 2% securities or 2% loans that they put on their portfolio at one point in time, it means that they're losing less money and they have more money to inject into the system and they can make other loans and do other things. And so the overall health of the consumer and their ability to obtain credit improves in this scenario.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't discount the shot in the arm effect, to Christy's point, around the activities that we all should be doing as originators to grow our business. We're all humans, right? And come Monday morning, it will feel a little bit easier to do some of those tasks, things that I should be doing to grow my business with today's results in the near term. So I think it's a positive shot in the arm. It's a good way to wrap up summer, if you will, and kick off the new season, i.e. it's almost football season everywhere.
There you go. Yeah, go ahead.
I've had a couple conversations with folks, and I feel like we now have kind of two really different camps that are, hey, this rate cut is going to happen. It's not massively going to change rates, but it's going to continue to keep the market moving. We're going to continue to see growth in sales. Buyers are going to get off the sideline because hope is powerful, and this is what's going to happen. And then there's this other group that is still like very pessimistic. That is, hey, I think Logan Monashami calls them the housing crash bros. Like, hey, look, this is going to get like '08. This is going to be awful. And that group, at least from the anecdotal conversations I've been having, that group seems to be growing, and their voices are getting louder. Like there's some fear in this marketplace from our industry, not necessarily from consumers, but from our industry.
Yeah, it's good for originators. If you're talking to clients on Monday, hey, all these Fed remarks have been priced in. So if you think there's going to be more drops in rates, the market has already incorporated all these expectations in. Get off the fence, lock your loan. Sure, we have a flip. Not that you want to champion this necessarily. Capital Markets Department will not be happy I said this, but yeah, we have a float down policy, and the event rates do go down. But it's been priced in. Lock your loan. One in the hand is better than two in the bush. Let's get your loan, closed here. Let's do it.
Well, as an originator, I've kind of always thought that way. Mm-hmm. That wherever rates are, you need to lock. Like, how big of a gambler are you?
Right. Well, especially first-time home buyers, right? If you're comfortable with this scenario that we're looking at together right now, how comfortable are you to if we didn't commit to it today, if it slipped the other way, an eighth or a quarter, is there enough comfort there for the potential upside if it happened to go the other way? And I've always thought if we're bird in the hand, call it what you want, right? But if you're comfortable now, it is the best time to lock and proceed.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Let's shift gears on a couple news items. I don't know, maybe somewhat tangential to this conversation. We saw the Lisa Cook accusations this week around mortgage fraud. I think that's our second or third kind of high level, similar kind of accusation. When is there more coming? What do we think? Is there a there?
It's hard to know, because when you think about buzzwords, sometimes I think that word gets thrown around a lot. When there are, one of the things that constitutes fraud is intentionality, right? You have to have intentionality for it to be fraud. And you also have to have knowledge that it's different than what you thought it was. So I wonder where the details are. Headlines grab a lot of attention.
Right.
I would say if I'm trying to get two places in a month and I put primary residence on both of them, I know what I'm doing. However, the most interesting part of the story to me, and sure, hopefully the actual facts come out later on, is she's been a historically dovish Fed member, which is exactly what Trump has been asking for. And it's like, sure, if you replace her with somebody and you then get to control, call it 4 of the 7 Fed governors will be Trump appointees, and maybe they pledge more fealty to Trump than she did. She was already one of the ones that was saying, I'm up for lower rates. I'm up for easier monetary policy. And I took some heat for this in the commentary the other day. My dad's in Europe, and so I've been writing it all week, talking about how this, along with Letitia James and Adam Schiff, there's a politically motivated trend. Then it's, of course, oh, well, you're not mentioning anything on the other side about it. It's just where we are right now. I'm it's hard these days to say anything without upsetting people out there. So like I said, I'm a little confused about she's historically been in Trump's corner with what he wants here, and yet here we are going down this path to make new headlines, and maybe it's a distraction thing to take away from other stories or whatever. But I do think there's something there. I just think it is politicized in some, to some degree. Yeah.
I would agree. And again, I think it's about headlines. And we live in a society where people scroll through TikTok and Instagram and whatever social media channels that you have, and you watch shows in 3x speed. And the attention span of folks is not enough to go click through more than the headline. And people tend to get their news off of Twitter and Google or YouTube and wherever. They're not reading in-depth pieces that are 19 or 20 pages long. And so that headline has impact.
Mm-hmm. It's so interesting you said that. I had a cross-country flight earlier this week from Boston to SFO, which is one of the longest in the US. It's almost 6 hours. And so I got caught up on a bunch of New Yorker articles. And one of them was talking about how you just have to Trump understands social media so well. And he really does, in terms of you just have to say something, and that's what people will latch on to. Like you said, Christy, the headline, the attention deficit, the lack of attention span we have these days. It doesn't have to be true, but once it's out there, it's true to a degree if people are talking about it. And he has mastered that. And so I'm sure it hasn't been a very fun week for Miss Cook, but
or her loan officer,
or her loan officer. But I'm all for less fraud. The counter argument.
I'm all for I mean, wait, it's anybody for more fraud? Like, we're all for less fraud.
I'm for less. However, someone did say something interesting to me, and I'm pretty down the middle. I like trolling both sides. But someone said, we'll go look through Pulte's real estate portfolio of all the people they've sold homes to. You think there's no fraud there? Like, there's fraud everywhere you look. It's just, where are you looking and where are you focused in the present moment? Like, come on.
Yeah. Set aside the person in this particular case, right? And let's assume that both loans are performing. What's the remedy at the end of the day? There's a loan level price adjust, and there's some original, whatever the factor was originally, there's economics, I think, that could, quote unquote, create a saleable loan at the end of the day.
Yeah. And it's a whole different can of worms we could open with this, but I'd like to think the industry is progressing in terms of its underwriting ability. Historically, the industry was so good at finding debt obligations, but not as good as finding various alternative streams of income. And it's like, if a loan is performing and saleable and all these things, what's the big? And I don't want to say what's the big deal, because someone's going to get at me with some lending violation thing. Lawyers are going to come out. But I'd like to think that the industry could get better at properly pricing loans that are high performing and are fine to originate at the end of the day. Yeah.
So, Robbie, you kind of opened this door for me, so I'm going to take it and kick it in. Your dad is in Europe. He's also commenting on our show. So, hey, Rob.
Oh, look at this. Christy's on the spot. How about your son is on the spot? Right. All right, anyways,
you're not going to get. Oh,
yeah,
Christy. Let's get her back in here. You're not going to get that from him.
No.
But Robbie, you all published a wonderful thought leadership piece, an article from David Spector this week, and I thought we could just spend a minute on there, because I think you got a chance to spend some time with him when he submitted the article. First of all, as a lifer in this industry, in this business, that David and the team that kind of he grew up with, if you will, were folks that I paid a lot of attention to early in my career, and he was always somebody that I looked up to and respected. And so I think it's super refreshing and helpful to have voices like David's, be shared with the industry, and specifically with the current newer generation of mortgage professionals. And I would just love your kind of synopsis on your conversation with them.
Well, I very much appreciate your kind words, both privately and publicly with your LinkedIn post as well. Absolute pleasure talking to David. And the way that I would steer this eventually is I want to talk about the discourse from people like him or a Bill Cosgrove or Dave Stevens when he was around, and that was part of the article, versus what we have on LinkedIn. And I'm not saying LinkedIn's bad by any means. I'll get there. But in regard to making the article with David, I sat down with him for an hour. We went through all these subjects. The article, I tried to keep his voice very much intact with it. He's been there. He's seen these market cycles. He's now, as he said in the article, he considers himself to be running a fintech. So it's neat to see from these legacy mortgage bankers cut your teeth with people like Angelo Mazzillo and to go to now, hey, how can we change the process? Sure, we have a huge advantage by being being a well-funded company, having all these borrowers and their data at our disposal. But how do we change the process? And I thought that the cool unifying thing from the article was, let's be together as an industry. Let's figure out what is important to us as an industry and champion for that and lobby for that and get change in those areas where we can all come together and get on board, versus having all these disparate voices or these are more his words than mine, but people that made a quick buck during COVID and thinking they know how mortgage works, when it's like,
right,
Ryan, you've been there for decades. David's been there for decades. My dad has been there for decades in terms of seeing these market cycles, seeing how these things work. What I think an interesting discussion today would be is, because obviously you're very active on LinkedIn, and there's all these voices on LinkedIn, and you could argue, and I agree to a large extent here, it's good to have a lot of smart people commenting on things. But a lot of times on LinkedIn, you can get lost in this, like they said this and they said this and they said that, and you don't know where to go. And so I think David was saying, kind of, for lack of a better way of phrasing this, let me be the adult in the room a little bit and kind of like, let's all come together.
Yeah.
I'm wondering your thoughts on the proper balance of, like, LinkedIn gives a voice to so many people. Maybe not everybody should have that voice, but it's nice to also have those opinions, like what the proper balance is there.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that. I mean, you and I could either agree or disagree on what the balance is. It doesn't matter, because there's literally no barrier to entry for anybody to put their opinion out there. Now, us as consumers of that content, we should be the ones that are the gatekeepers. And so, adding comments to stupid posts just adds fuel to the fire, and they're going to keep doing it. So I've tried to be very intentional about whose content I engage with, because there's people that I know they're posting something, and the reason they're posting it is for the shock factor, and it's really not who they are or what they believe at the core. And so I won't even bother with that, because that's what the algorithm wants you to, wants you to engage. So I would love to figure out, like, first of all, I think it's brilliant to have this forum that you've created with the Chrisman Commentary website, with the voice of the industry, with David kind of kicking that off. So the question becomes, how do we make sure that gets seen by as many people as possible? That's why I did the post earlier in the week. Not that I have this huge LinkedIn following, but I get people that will see what I post that may not necessarily look at your website, and vice versa. And so I would encourage, I think we're up to 10,000 viewers now on the show today. Congratulations. I would encourage all of our viewers, if you haven't checked out the article, do that. And, if you see something, whether it's on Chrisman Commentary or on a Housing Wire platform or other platforms that you think is, that other people should be engaged with, let's share that out there. I think that's where we can get those voices and those conversations going.
Yeah, I got some good feedback from Rich Swerbinsky, who's now president of the Ohio MBA, and he basically said there's this massive and constantly growing demand for relevant content on relevant issues. from our industry, and LinkedIn provides a great platform for that. And so I'm not here to badmouth LinkedIn or anything, but like Ira said in the comments to the chat, it's like Twitter.
Yeah.
Who should you follow and what should you believe? And I think we all have discerning capabilities when it comes to that. We have pretty good filter. We know what's fluff and we know what isn't. MBA as an industry, I think one of the reasons David did this is MBA is conflicted. Look where their revenue comes from to understand their dilemma with their voice or their action. Sometimes, I've been one out there, and this is an opinion show. So I will say, I've been one to say to Bob Brokesmith, stand up for the industry more. We should always have a seat at the table when it comes to housing issues in DC. And I think we've lost some of that. However, MBA can be conflicted sometimes because look at their all their different members and how they're trying to appease various interests. It's nice that David in this piece was saying, you can follow me. Let's come together and kind of go, unify here.
Yeah. And I would add, Robbie, to that in terms of, MBA and other industry trade associations. And I know I posted something about, the Mortgage Action Alliance and advocacy in August, and Brendan McKay, who is with the Broker Action Coalition. He's also a broker owner. He commented or posted and basically called out anybody that criticizes an association or associations in general, and or makes comments, that are not necessarily productive, but then is also not involved with any association. You're involved. No. I see you and your dad at state.
Let's not digress. I'm with you. If you're going to complain about something, propose action that'll or contribute to positive.
Yeah, that's right. And or be involved, be part of the process. There's plenty of opportunities for literally anybody in our industry to be involved. And I'm not saying be involved, it's just about economics, because it's not. There's a free resource, Mortgage Action Alliance. Anybody in the industry can be part of that, and your voice can be heard. But get involved, whether it's at the national level, at the community, state level. We all have those opportunities, and that's really that's where change happens. And we need more of the David Spectors of the world to kind of to help us understand and put perspective around where we are today relative to where we've been.
And now's a good time for the mortgage industry. I would argue that more affordable housing, not doing what has as much bipartisan support as it's had in decades. Yeah. Like, now's the time to speak up. Now's the time to get involved. Now's the time to make your voice heard and those sorts of things. And I think it'll go further now than it has in a long time. For sure.
Well, we lost Christy, and she was on a spotty Wi-Fi. But Robbie, any last word for the last word today?
I'm going to reiterate what Christy said at the start. The news that came out this week, especially as pertaining to the Fed today, makes for a great storyline when you pick up that phone and call your borrowers on Monday.
Yeah.
Hammer those phones, let people know now's the time to get going. I know you've probably been on the sidelines, been waiting for stuff. Now's as good a time as ever. Hopefully this puts a little pep in the industry's step, a little wind in the sails. And that'd be nice to see, especially as what is traditionally the strong home buying season winds down. A little boost here toward the end of the dog days of summer.
Yeah, I mean, that was a good little KP shot of positivity for the audience. Well done, Robbie.
Thank you.
Is it possible? This will be the closing question. Is it possible that the actual home buying season's about to kick off? That's a possibility.
Sure. Let's do more positive. Yeah, why not? Because the people that buy in the spring or the summer, they're traditionally it's moving for schools, and that's why they do it all the time. We have all these first-time home buyers on the sidelines, or we have all these people that are empty nesters that have kind of been in this lock-in effect on the sidelines. Let's get those two groups going. They're not, they're a little more agnostic when it comes to seasonality. So I think there's definitely some meat on the bone out there.
We'll let Bob have the last word, because he's He's got a lot there. Not being engaged in the conversation is not an option in this mortgage world. Any mortgage advocacy group is good. Not just the quote, if you're not at the dinner, you're on the menu, but when we are silent, someone else is telling our story. We must support the value of housing finance and meet your elected officials and develop a relationship that will determine our future. Amen, Bob. Love it, brother. Robbie, great having you on the show. Have a great weekend. We're off next Friday, folks. Going to take the long holiday weekend. We'll give Rob the last word. I don't want to know why Brian is always staring off into the distance. I'm shy. I'm just shy. I don't know what to say.
Yeah. So we will see everybody on Friday, September 5th. No show next week. Enjoy the Labor Day weekend. Enjoy those last days of summer. Try and get outside with these warmer temperatures.
See you guys. Thanks, Robbie.